want to make a video here, and it's windy, but I think these headphones block a little bit of the sound. I did a test. If it's bad, I'm sorry. It is really pretty out. So the other thing with these headphones is that my voice echoes. It's highly annoying and distracting. Yes, my voice is highly annoying and distracting, even to me. So maybe if I put this off my ears, I don't have to listen to myself speak, but you can still hear me. That's a lot better. Looks ridiculous, but kind of looked ridiculous before, huh? All right, that should do. I can still kind of hear. All right. So, how's that? So, once I was praying, and it was a normal day, and God surprised me. You know, when I pray, I expect to be heard, and that's not because of who I am, but it's because I know something about who God is. It's only because of that. And still, I get surprised when sometimes I ask questions and I think he's going to take a long time to answer them, or I ask, in the past, I've asked for things I think are huge, and I expect it's going to take time for him to work that request. Not because of limitations in him, but he's putting water through some really sturdy rock, and it takes time to work through, right? Because of us. And sometimes he just busts something out that's so valuable, the value is impossible to convey externally, or at least, you know, I would struggle to even start. So, in the spirit of that, I would like to share with you something that I consider to be tremendously valuable. And this is out of nowhere because no one said anything to me, no one asked for this, but this is in my heart today, and I want to share it. So I have not prepared a text. I don't have, I have a few bullets, and maybe I'll look up scriptures as I talk. I'm actually recording this on my laptop, so I can talk with my hands because I'm part Italian. And so we'll see how this goes. And if there's clicking as I'm recording, I hope that's not annoying. If you can hear it, I'm just looking up scriptures as they occur to me. To write this would take me a very long time, a very long time. And so to speak it, if you give me permission to be more sloppy with it, I can get it to you faster. And we'll count on the Holy Ghost to carry it into your heart and expound it in ways that you need to hear and highlight the things that are most useful to you. And I pray that God does that, and I know he will. Okay, so this video is, and it's probably going to be a series, is probably best called How to Conquer Temptation. But specifically, I'm going to be talking about Satan. There's a lot to say about this, and I'll elaborate on it in books, but it's going to take a while, and I want to give this to you now so you don't have to wait. So we'll start in the Garden of Eden very shallowly. That is a deep topic. But we read, let me squint a little bit more in this reflecting sunshine. It's beautiful light, so I can see my screen. We read in Genesis 3:14, "And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust thou shalt eat all the days of thy life." So what is this curse about? What is this dust? Well, if you look up that word in Hebrew, it's the same word used to describe what Adam's body was made out of. So here's the long story short. Satan and all of his minions, they feed off of us. They feed off of us in our mortal state. How so? Well, at least in two ways. One is our bodies, we are given by God the grand gift of agency, of choosing whether to listen to him or not, whether to obey him or not. And what happens is when we disobey him, our bodies are structured such that when we turn away from the light, we admit darkness. You're always influenced by the one or the other. There's no neutral. in everything you do, in every moment, you're either orienting yourself towards greater light or orienting yourself towards greater darkness. And you can flip-flop between, but that's the way it goes. So when you orient yourself towards greater darkness, you make your body, what's a good word for this? A refuge. You make your body a refuge for demonic spirits. And what you provide to them is a shield from the light. The light is in and through all things. There is only one creation in all of God's creation that can choose so fully to admit or dispel light, and that's us. And when we dispel it, we're not actually diminishing it at all because it's from God and it can't be overcome. What we're doing is turning down our perception of it and the degree to which we're quickened by it or actuated by it. And in doing that, we make our bodies a shield from the light. So why does that matter for these demons? Why did Jesus describe people as well-furnished dwellings for these demons? So that was when he was talking about casting out devils. You know, they go around seeking places they can hide. They're like rodents. I tilled up a field a little while ago, and there was this big giant something or another that took off out of the field as I was tilling it up because he wanted to find another place to hide. He had a really good place, and I destroyed it, so he ran off to a lesser place. Because demons aren't dumb. They will find the best place that's open to them. And in this case, as far as a shield goes, that's the person who turns away from the greatest light. And so the more God attempts to show you, the greater and the more you turn away from it, the greater a refuge you become for the demons. Because for demons, light, it's like salt on a slug. And I'm going to tell you exactly why that is. Everything in creation, all power comes through faith. And this is a shocker for people who haven't heard it before or maybe don't believe it. The power of demons also comes through faith. And you say, well, how can that be? How can you have faith in what's evil? Again, this could be a really deep topic, but just imagine it like this. When you ascend in power and glory, you grow towards God. When you turn away from God, you don't just immediately drop down like an equalizer on a stereo when the sound stops. You keep the high water mark. And just as there's a process to come up higher, and you do not come up higher immediately, you do not go lower immediately. There's a process to come down. There's a process of exaltation. There's a process of abasement. And so you can only acquire power through obedience to God and faith in God. And you lose power when that faith is overcome, and inasmuch as it is overcome. And what I've just given you is exactly how Satan is overcome in this process of creation. I haven't explained that in detail, but I just gave you the key. So demons feed on your wickedness, and the way you feed them through your disobedience to God is that you strengthen the reasons they have to believe what they believe. So if you've read through Faith, which if you haven't, I really hope you do, book I wrote. If you have read through Faith, you understand that faith, in part, it's what you believe. But it's also the reasons you have to believe those things. This idea that faith is like something other than rational belief is a very it's a very harmful idea. It blocks people from a great deal of power they would otherwise have. But Satan has beliefs. Chief among them, or among them somewhere at the top, is the idea that there is a better way than God's way. And he's had this since the beginning, and embracing that idea kicked off the fall, his fall. And his fall is still a process that's undergoing. But what happens as you cruise through time is there are more and more evidences that his belief is wrong. And so I think the best example of this, the highest impact example so far, has been the mortal ministry of Jesus Christ. It wasn't just his temptation in the wilderness where he defeated Satan. He had several battles with Satan. His entire life was one of those battles. His time in Gethsemane was one of those battles. His time on the cross was one of those battles. So the time in the wilderness was one. And with each successive victory, Jesus weakened Satan permanently. And how did he do it? Not with a sword, but through faith. And that's the same way we fight Satan. But we do it in our scope. He did it in his, and we follow his example where we stand. And through it, we come up to where he stands, which is wonderful. So, okay, how does this apply to your life in any way whatsoever? Well, when you fight Satan, what you're doing is you are robbing him of evidence that his belief is true. There are macro level impacts and examples of this, and there are micro level impacts and examples of this. In all of creation, if you read in Revelation that there's a quota of martyrs that have to die in loving the Lord more than they love their lives, that quota is part of this body of evidence. It's an argument that's irrefutable once it's closed. And it's all part of the process of stripping Satan of his power and sort of diminishing the wicked and exalting the righteous. Just like that. That's all of creation. That's the point, right? On a micro level, that's the macro level. On a micro level, every single time you choose one influence or the other, you're either making yourself a more comfortable place for demons, or making yourself a more painful place for demons. You're either becoming salt, which sweetens sacrifices, and also, not sweetens them, salt doesn't sweeten, but improves sacrifices, or kills slugs, right? So the demons are the slugs. You invite angels, you dismiss demons. And the other way, when you admit darkness into your life in any way, no matter how small, you're opening the door to greater demonic presence in your life. I shouldn't say presence in your life. By embracing the light, you're also inviting demonic presence in your life, but it will be externally as you do battle with greater and greater members of Satan's kingdom. On the other hand, you're admitting them inside of you, and then you're also becoming more and more of a stooge, a little Manchurian for him to puppet and attack other people through. Because this is another key. As you become more righteous, the absolute last thing a demon is going to do is try to inhabit you. That would be the dumbest thing they could ever do. They will run from you, okay, the minor ones. But as you go up the scale, you will deal with ones that go up the scale. And they won't try to attack you directly. Satan didn't come to Jesus in the wilderness and try to possess him. He was external, and he was trying to tempt him externally, okay? Now that was early, right? Throughout his ministry, he continued to be tempted by Satan. Satan went away, but his influence didn't. His temptation did not. It's not like he magically ended. Jesus leveled up right then, but the game was still going. And how did subsequent temptations come? Through other people. And as you ascend, more of those will be through people closest to you. He will use the people closest to you to cause you harm, because he can't get to you, but he can get to them. And so this is why this is another potentially very complicated thing, but this is why as you ascend, this is one of many reasons why you're going to suffer more. And that's because you can stop demons. I'm going to give you the tool to stop demons from messing with you directly right here. And from this point on, it's up to you whether you do those things, and they will leave you alone in that form. But what you cannot stop is them messing with you through other people. In fact, the more you do these things I'm telling you, the more they're going to do that. But it's a much better place to be because you're doing God's work and you're crushing the serpent with everything you do and everything you are. Just making sure it's still recording. It's so bright. The sun, not okay. You can't make Satan stronger with the sins that you do. The reason for that is all power comes from God. All you're doing is submitting to his waning, decaying power. You're just joining a team that's basically already lost. But you can make him weaker. It doesn't matter who you are and how nothing you are, how meaningless your life is, whatever you think it is, I should say. You personally, you can make Satan weaker. And I'm going to tell you how. All right, so let's transition to Satan being like a lion. So we read in the New Testament, Satan's like a lion, right? Maybe we should look that up. Just give me a second. Like a lion, he devours. Let's look that up. If I can type without seeing the screen. All right, so we're going to the New Testament. I know Peter said this. Yep, 1 Peter 5:8. Let's go to New International Version. Is that what this is? No, it's the New King James. We'll go to the original King James. Be sober. This is 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. So before we talk about the lion part, let's talk about the adversary part. One of Satan's chief tools in tempting you is persuading you that somehow your interests are his interests, or that somehow he actually has something to offer you. In reality, everything he offers you is less than what God offers you. And in fact, it's probably less than what God has already given you. So going back to Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, think about when the devil took him up to the pinnacle of the temple. So here they are, and I'm sorry, not on the temple. He took him up into a high mountain apart, right? Quote unquote. That means something, but let's skip that for now. Let's just pretend it's a literal high mountain, which it wasn't. And he's showing him the kingdoms of the earth. And that's one way you can tell it's not a literal high mountain, because you can't see the whole earth from one mountain that's on earth. And he says, all of these are mine to give, and I will give you them if you worship me. That's a paraphrase from my memory, so don't quote me on that, but that's the idea. And it's interesting to see how Jesus responds to that. Maybe we should go look at that. That's in, it's Matthew 5. It's not Matthew 5. Again, I can't spell without seeing what I'm typing, but, oh, come on. Don't fail me, Elon Musk. I'm on Starlink. It's pretty great. I was Matthew 4. I wasn't far off. All right. I thought it was. Okay. Sorry. Just be patient. All right. I just want to get the order right. Where's this mountain? High mountain. Okay. All these things I will give thee if thou wilt fall down and worship me. It's Matthew 4. Then Jesus saith unto him, so here's his answer. Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. This is crazy interesting. So when Satan does something, he can't do something without teaching you something about what he knows and what his strategy is. And the same thing with God. Everything God does tells you something about him. So when Jesus replies this way, you can ask this cloud of questions like, why did he say this? What are the other things he could have said? What would I have said? What would I have done? How can I investigate the gap and move towards him. And this is not an exception to that. So what would you have said if Satan took you into a high mountain and said, I have all the kingdoms of the world, they're mine, and I'll give them to you if you worship me? So the reason I got onto this tangent is I was saying anything he offers you is, it might not be his to give, and it's probably less than what God has already given you, but it's certainly less than what God could give you. So God's interesting, and again, you can go through and analyze the difference between God and Satan on everything, and it's very fruitful. But Satan says, I'll give you exactly what you want. God doesn't say that. He says, I might give you exactly what you want, but if I do, it will be after I offer you something far better, and I will do everything I can to persuade you it's far better. But I'll only give you something less when you absolutely cut yourself off from something better. What a difference. And Satan says, I will give you all these things if you worship me. God says, you receive everything I have through worshiping me. It's not a do this and I will give you that. It's the only way you can really have this is to become this way. And here's how you become this way. True worship is just living as you sincerely believe God would in your place. And it's incremental. It's a cycle. It just keeps going towards him. So more could be said about that. But here's the thing. Jesus didn't come to earth to get all the kingdoms of the world. He's not interested in that. He had much more than that before he came here. He had everything before he came here. He let go of everything, not to get less than everything, but to give everything to us. And that's why he was there. And interestingly, he doesn't even bother going into all this with Satan because Satan doesn't deserve his time. This isn't a... Frequently we're in conversations with people and they're feigning sincerity, but they don't care. You know, when someone asks you how you're doing, do they really care? Sometimes they do, but very rarely, right? It's what you say when you don't care. Anyway, Jesus was not about to go for something less than what he came to do. And he certainly wasn't about to submit to someone less than who he came from, right? The Father. So he said, no, I'm here to worship the Father. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, back on track. So lions. So Peter was talking about lions. He says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, and he is your adversary. He is not interested in the things you're interested in. He is interested in one thing, which is maximizing your misery. God is interested in one thing, which is maximizing your joy. And the devil's interested in maximizing your pain and your misery. Let's just say misery. Be sober. At least twice in my life, I don't remember the occasion, but someone close to me was cracking jokes, and they cracked a joke about Satan. And, you know, sometimes I feel like one of my dogs. If you mess with a husky too much, they'll just bite you or bite whoever. Like if a puppy's irritating them, they just turn and bite them. And I think people feel that way when I turn and bite them. But on one occasion, Jesus said, someone said to him, Lord, why don't you stop these people from praising you? And he said, if I did, the stones would cry out. In the gospel plan, there's a whole lot of waiting and not hiding, but biding your time. And he does this with himself chiefly. But all of his servants are on this too. You know, Abraham wandered in the promised land. He didn't inherit it during his life. And that's because it's all part of the plan. He needed to not inherit it during his life. There were reasons. And there were reasons why the Israelites were in Egypt for however many 100 years. And then they came back. There's reasons for all this stuff. For all time periods, there are reasons. And when the Spirit impels sharpness, and I'm not talking about people that are just weak and frustrated and whatever. I'm saying when that fire comes into someone and God says, I know you don't want to say this, but if you don't say this, I have to recede from you because I would say this. And you say, okay, Lord. And you say it. And you know full well what people are thinking and what they're going to feel, but you have to do it because it's the only way they can be exposed to what they would get from God if they had the relationship with him that you do. And that's how you become that bridge for the electrical arc, so to speak. Anyway, so someone was cracking a joke about Satan. This has happened at least twice in my life, and both times the Spirit said the same thing. And so I said to them what God said to me. He said, if you knew who you're joking about, you would not be joking about him. You've never met Satan, but I have. And if you'd met him, you wouldn't be joking around about him. And that's what I think of when I see Peter saying, be sober. Are we still recording? Okay, it hasn't automatically stopped. About to be attacked by a squirrel. So, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. A roaring lion is no joke. Have you ever been face to face with a lion? I have. In like reality, not a vision. I'm saying like at a zoo in a different country where they don't care so much about lawsuits or whatever. So there's a chain link fence, me, adult male lion. And he wasn't walking around roaring. He was laying down, clearly irritated that he was in a cage and very tired of being in a cage. And boringly, he had his eyes closed and he just roared a little bit. And I'm telling you, it was one of the most spiritual, real life, like day-to-day life experiences I've ever had. On that list is jumping out of airplanes and airborne school and some other weird things that people would not think of as spiritual experiences, but I could have been in the Sistine Chapel. I mean, staring up, for me, it touched something that's very deep and very old. And a roaring lion is not a joke. There's something about that noise that goes right through you. And I can only imagine being in a field in a primitive situation and there's you hear that and all you have is a stick. So good luck to you, my friend. So how is the devil like this? Well, lions, they're kind of lazy actually, but they only attack weak things if they have a choice. So predators tend to not be too dumb, and they'll focus their efforts on what yields the greatest result. And they're able to do this crazy probability. Even bears do this. Like if you put down a board with nails in it, and a bear steps on it, there's some kind of weird bear math going on in their head where they say the expected utility of what I thought I was going to get is now no longer worth it, and I'm just going to walk away and never come back. And this is how Satan works. And all of his minions, they're strategic. They're not idiots. So I always think this is going to go way faster than it will. So I'm just going to keep telling myself it's quicker than writing a book, Rob. Okay. All right. So lions prey on what is weak. So if you're weak, you're making yourself a target. Now, if you're strong, you also make yourself a target. Okay. But you make yourself a target in a different way. And it can actually, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it, quoting myself from before. I'm not making light of a very serious situation. But it's kind of a game once you know what you're doing. And once you've paid the price to know what you can about God. It doesn't become a game because of you. It becomes a game as you get to know who God is and just how little of a threat Satan really is to God. This isn't my opinion only. If you read Isaiah, you will read that there will come a time when the whole world looks at Satan and says, is this really him? This is the guy everyone was afraid of? And that's at the conclusion of his descent. Anyway, so that's kind of cheating. It's like once the puzzle is solved, everybody knows the answer, right? Okay, so Jesus says to Peter, take caution, paraphrasing, take caution because Satan wants to sift you as wheat. And I don't really like that that phrasing, because I don't know if you've ever sifted wheat. I just almost got divorced because I planted tons of rye, and that's a joke. But I always joke about the divorce meter. And it's like my wife has this meter on her head, and when I when I take things too far, it goes dit, 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 and I can see this look on her face, and I back down because I just don't want to start World War III. So she's really chill. It's funny because I'm exaggerating, but she does get frustrated with my ideas, understandably so. So one of these bright ideas was to plant like 1.5 acres of rye, and I have this weed whacker set up to mow it all down. But and I did a smaller experiment first, but I was really convinced that we could hand harvest all of this in a day or less. And I probably promised her that as well as a condition of me planting it. And it ended up taking like 2 weeks, of which I was working full time, and 2 of my sons are working with me full time. And so she had to do a lot of that. So my point is, I have a lot of experience sifting not wheat but rye. It's the same diff, the same structure. You've got these seeds and a whole lot of chaff. You got to beat the heads. I was going to do a video on it, but I try to keep these minimal. So maybe one day. But the point is, the first time you pour the raw beaten stuff, the first time you pour it, a whole ton of chaff blows off. And you look down, and the pile that's on the ground is it's a lot cleaner than it was, a lot cleaner. And then it's kind of diminishing returns. You got to hope for the wind blowing and all this stuff, and you just keep going. And then you know you're done when what you pour out and what the wind blows through is the same as what you started with. So when the finished product hit by the biggest wind is exactly what you started with, you're done. And there's another verse somewhere that talks about the idea of God wanting to get this wheat out of the sort of raw planted, and then there's the wheat and the tares and all these other things. But this is a really important idea. Satan doesn't sift you as wheat. He sifts you as chaff. He wants to get rid of you. God wants to purify you. So you know you're done refining precious metal when what you get out of it is what you started with. There's nothing you can subject it to change it. I'm telling you extraordinarily valuable things right now to understand God and what he's calling you to in life, what we're here for. But back to Satan. So he doesn't want to sift you as wheat. He wants to sift you out of the wheat into the chaff. He wants to overcome you. He wants that wind, which is designed to purify the wheat, he wants it to blow you away. The wind's blowing. It's a sign. So how do you overcome that? Well, be the wheat. So the reason the wheat doesn't blow away is it's way heavier than the chaff. Chaff is super light. And it makes great bedding for chickens, just so you know. So it blows away with the wind. The wheat or the rye, it falls through, and you just so be heavier, right? So, and you're like, Rob, I thought you said people shouldn't be overweight. You got to take care of yourself. Yes, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying make your character greater than it is. So how do you do this? So now we're transitioning into how exactly you resist him. So there's another piece of advice from Peter, same chapter. he says, whom, this is the very next verse, whom resists steadfast in the faith. And he gives some advice that I don't think is particularly helpful. But we'll go with this, resist steadfast in the faith. And then James talks about if you resist the devil, he will flee from you. Now, people try that without power and without efficacy because what they think they can do is just postpone him. And say, well, if I postpone action, he'll leave me alone. Resisting does not mean postponing. I'm going to write that down, versus postpone. I'll use that later in something. Resisting him does not mean ignoring him. I'll say it again. Resisting him does not mean ignoring him. I told you there's two influences in life. There's light and there's dark. And it's a gradient, right? But you're either going one way or the other. There's no such thing as neutral. Nothing is neutral. Nothing. So resisting him is not trying to stay in the middle, because the middle doesn't exist. It's not just saying, there's a Rush song. That's where it is. He says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. It's true, right? Truth in strange places. So how do you actually resist him? Well, I'm going to tell you. So you resist him by becoming stronger. That's sort of the long-term tack. And then there's a short-term thing that you do in the moment. So how do you become stronger in the long term? So you get stronger by recognizing that your strength is in and from your shepherd. So you're a sheep, Satan's a lion, and Jesus is your shepherd. He's my shepherd, he's your shepherd. He's the shepherd. The thing about a shepherd is sheep don't have weapons, right? But they do have a shepherd, and the shepherd has weapons. If I say shepherd a few more times, I feel like someone's going to have to sponsor me, and I get paid every time I say it. But he can only protect you through you listening to him. That's not a here's a prize for you obeying me. That's what he lays down. So Paul talked about how there's no affliction that comes to man unless God gives you the strength to overcome it or the opportunity to escape it. And Nephi says that every commandment God gives, we have the power to obey. He doesn't give you a command that you don't have the power to obey. Which means if an idea comes to you and it seems like it's showing you what God would do in your place, you can guarantee without a doubt that you also have the capacity to obey that, no matter how hard it seems. And one tactic Satan uses is he tries to tell you that what's been revealed to you is the fullness of the immortal God. How could anyone live up to that? Couldn't be farther from the truth. You can't handle the fullness of the eternal God. That's why you're here and not with him, right? That's why he doesn't appear to you all the time. That's why angels don't come to you every day. It's why you don't have billowing revelations on your mind every moment of the day. If you could take that, your life would be a lot different than it is. So what exactly are you getting when you have this idea of, I should say something nice to this person I've never met before because the Spirit has shown me that they're having a really hard time. Or here's a piece of trash on the ground. I didn't put it there, but I can sure pick it up. Or, I could try a little harder at work, and I know no one's going to notice, and I'll get paid the same either way, but I'm really not doing my best. Or whatever it is. That's God. That's his voice to you, and you get to choose which way you're going to go. So, he can only protect you if you listen to him, and he will do everything he can to guide you in the paths of safety and peace, but he can't force that on you. It's better to say, not that he can't, but like the whole reason he did all this was to give you opportunities that you can't have if he's forcing you, right? So he's not going to violate this massive gift he's given to all of us in terms of opportunity just to force you into a little temporary comfort and at the expense of everything greater. Still recording? All right. The wonder of QuickTime is like, is it going to stop? We don't know. Timer's going, video's not. What's going on?